My ex was still living with his parents, and I came over for dinner with them. His mum had lit some candles in the dining room, and my ex decided that she was trying to poison him. He had just read an article about how even small fires can spread dangerous particles. Dinner ended up with him and his parents yelling at each other over the dinner table, with my ex wearing a gas mask and refusing to eat. I completely understand why this was the last straw. I told my husband that he needed to lay off our daughter for getting a B on a unit in chemistry. She was asking to quit all her extracurriculars, that she loved, and didn't to get out of bed. I said we needed to be worried about her mental state. He said, well, if the kids aren't going to respect what I say, then maybe I should leave. It literally flipped the switch on my feelings for him, after 20 years together. Instantly, our child was struggling and he was so self-absorbed that he could only think about himself. Done. Good for you. Your daughter is lucky you're her parent. He cheated, manipulated, gaslighting, called me crazy so many times in the couple years I stupidly put up with him, but it was one day he crossed a certain line I did not know I had. He called me a stupid bitch. For some reason that was it. I no longer felt weak, I felt true deep anger. I was so angry I threw all his stuff into the dumpster at my apartment. I never spoke to him again. It is so out of character for me to be an angry person or throw something away that is valuable. I felt so powerful. I had a very similar situation. Dated a guy for 8 years. He got very controlling to the point where I couldn't go for drinks with friends or even to the gym without getting into an argument because I wasn't spending enough time with him and wasn't meeting his needs in the bedroom. Not sure why, but I was even compromising with him and trying to make things work. He got drunk one night and also called me a stupid bitch, and that was the end of that. My coworker would go on sexist rants and would find any excuse to talk shit about attractive women who came to our bar. I had already complained to management about his racist and sexist remarks. He would drink on shift and become increasingly irate. The more he had to drink, the more he would follow you around and ramble. One day while working together, I found his gun in a drawer in the bar. Put in my 2 weeks the next day. No thank you. That was my final straw. Bartending was not worth getting shot by a drunk incel. As far as I know, nothing happened to him. At least I won't be there when he loses control and shoots somebody. Woman shrugging. I am glad you are safe. WTF. I hope I can post about a job-related moment because this just happened last night. I work at the front desk at a nursing home. A man walked in and said he wanted to visit his wife. He was just kicked out for profanity a day before. He demanded I go get a wheelchair and leave the desk to wheel him up to see her, 10-minute walk. I told him I am not allowed to leave the desk. He started screaming and calling me names. It's a Saturday and my on-call boss took his side stating, "That's just how he is," and told me to just do what he says. I said I am not going to be called a stupid mfing bitch and a cu*t and quit on the spot. Good for you. What a shit manager. He constantly talked over me when he didn't like the stuff I had to say. I ended up keeping a list of stuff to bring up to him when I got the chance, and the list just kept getting longer and longer. Didn't realize how stressed I was and how much resentment had built up in me until I talked to a friend and everything came spewing out. Broke things off immediately after that. I'm in the same boat, but it's with my brother. I've finally gotten so fed up with it that I call him out every time he talks over me. As in every time we have a conversation essentially. One situation, he asked me a question but didn't even let me answer before talking over me again. It's hard, but I have began to not stop what I'm saying just because he's talked over me. I finish my sentence or will tell him in a firm voice, I am not finished. Do not talk over me. I don't know if it will get the point across, but I'm tired of people thinking they can just talk over you and that what you have to say isn't important. It didn't happen overnight, but 2 things. He wouldn't cook me dinner the day I came home from having abdominal surgery, and when my pet died, whilst having an op at the vet's, he wouldn't comfort me nor would take me to say goodbye to them. In reality, the moment should have been the first few months when he kept ghosting me on dates. For some reason I decided to stay and see where things went, but now I look back and it was a major red flag. My boss got so angry he threw pens near my face and kicked the printer so hard it broke. We worked alone together. When I told him he was being abusive and scaring me, he told me I wasn't cut out for this work. Quit and got a better job. I worked for a very abusive attorney who liked to refer to her office as hectic and fast-paced. I've since learned that's code for disorganized and needlessly stressful. The day I heard her tell another employee to go fuck herself, I knew I wouldn't be there much longer. I've also learned that it's a huge red flag when a potential employer asks if you have a thick skin. That's code for, I'm an abusive asshole and you will go home and cry every day if you are anything more than a soulless robot. They ask me about the thickness of my skin, and I nope out before they can even finish the question. Not dealing with husband, boyfriends but toxic workmen. I was sitting around the larger conference room to a meeting I was just casually involved in. I was of course the only woman. The director, a piece of shit human being, walked into the room and gave me his computer and said, "Set it all up," and walked out. I had zero ducks to give anymore. I was recently back from mat leave and that same day he had the nerve to ask who the picture of the kid was. When I said my son, he responded, "Oh, didn't realize that was you pregnant, just fat." I didn't touch the computer or get anything set up. His little minions kept telling me to and I said feel free, that's not my job. He walks in 5 minutes after the meeting should start with his director and asks why nothing is ready to go. I just smiled and said, "Not sure. Douche Canoe, insert real name, is running this meeting." I applied out a week later and gave no notice. I did call HR and report it all after the fact. Damn, I hate that. WTF man, I'm so sorry that happened. I'm glad you went elsewhere. My spineless ass would have stayed there for longer and just dealt with it. Used to work reception. Crappy pay and expected unpaid overtime, but hey, I needed the money. Told my manager that I will work both Christmas and NY on the condition that I get my vacation days approved for end of Jan beginning of Feb. A dead time for most hotels. She took the deal and all was good. I did my part but my vacation was still not approved. I asked her about it and she said she will but she has to see if she can. Basically BS. I did check with my colleagues and none had overlapping days and they got their vacations approved. So why not me? Well, and out 30 days before my vacation I handed in my notice and went on vacation. It was awesome seeing her lose her shit. When my parents threw my past abusive relationship in my face, when I called out my 45-year-old brother out for trolling university bars and taking advantage of drunk 20-year-olds and completely destroying their lives. All while leaving his 4-year-old with my 70-plus-year-old parents to take care of. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. I said my piece and walked away from them all. Haven't regretted it a single second and my life has a lot less drama in it now. It's hard to make those decisions against family. I'm proud of you for choosing what's best for yourself. My hospital told me that it was okay for me, a non-stroke certified nurse, to be charge nurse of the stroke unit, due to short staffing. Absolutely not. Not safe for me, all the new grads, and the patients. Administration told me it would be fine because I personally wouldn't have stroke patients myself. But I'm just there because I know hospital policy, procedure and that I wouldn't have any responsibility if something were to go wrong. Haha. No, have you been following the Rwanda Vought case? They also expected this on top of working nights without administrative support. Always had one in the building. But they all quit. Sometimes lab, phleb wouldn't show and we wouldn't know. One respiratory therapist in-house. It was too much. But that charge situation broke me and I left. And life is great now. And guess who had to shut down their stroke unit? Were you on my floor? I worked on a horrible neuro-med-surg floor and I would have to help the floats chart neuro assessments. Looking back, that was just messed up for everyone. I had tolerated his bullshit and emotional manipulation for about 4 years. One day, my sister was in town and I booked us a car to go to a far-off hiking spot. I had a cold that time by the way, but I pulled through. When we were going back, it was the evening and the car AC was bothering my cold a little too much. He was driving because he was the only one with a license. I asked him to turn off the AC because I was not feeling well. He said that if I was that bothered by the AC, I should go sit in the back. Lol. That was the day I realized how little he cared about me. I fell terribly sick after that day for a week and I never heard from him. I lost every bit of love and care I had for him that day. It took me several months to realize that apart from emotional manipulation, all he did was exploit me for money and sex. I hate him so much. He had been gaslighting me for the entire relationship to the point I started recording what he was saying. He said something and I disagreed and told him he had said something else previously. He gaslighted me and started to get angry. When I adamantly refused to believe him, he told me I needed to go to the doctor to get on medication for my paranoia, even though I had what he originally said recorded. Smart move. I don't know if this comment is allowed or too off topic, but I needed to read these replies for my hope in humanity. Thank you for posting. So many subreddits are filled with people, of any gender, putting up with absolutely deplorable behavior from people who are supposed to care about them, and not realizing how not normal it is. I don't mean to victim blame. I grew up in one of those situations, so I know what it's like to be completely oblivious to the severity of it. It's just nice to hear the testimony of people that were able to come out the other side. I agree. It's such a liberating feeling to realize you're not alone. He asked me to babysit his toddler because it was an emergency. Apparently he had an emergency every week. This final time his daughter was being an absolute nightmare, begging for her daddy. Another girl I was friends with posted a picture on Instagram with him drinking. Oh, the petty in me would have called the cops and said he dropped this kid off and now he won't answer. He was supposed to be back in 5 minutes. It's been hours. I can't take care of her. It would be really fun for him to answer to the cops and probably Child Protective Services what happened. After 5 years of severe abuse, someone I had just met saw me take a phone call with my then boyfriend. He came up to me a few days later at our mutual friend's house and said, "I saw your face when you answered the phone. You looked upset and scared. It's not right for a boyfriend to make you look the way I saw you look." He wasn't doing it in a creepy way. He wasn't trying to get into my pants. He was just a nice guy, making an observation and checking to see if I was okay. Plenty of people in my life had told me to get rid of that asshole, but something about an acquaintance that I had just met making that observation just snapped me out of the fog I had been in. We became friends and he helped me get away. I am convinced that that relationship would have killed me, and 15 years later, I am still so grateful to him for essentially saving my life. This one bring back my hope for humanity. Glad you understood his observation. I told him I was really depressed and having a super bad day. Like super upset, and he replied, "I'm having a bad day too, you know. I'm so horny." I realized at that moment he either didn't care or respect me. Also, unfortunately, this wasn't the first time I was just dumb and ignoring red flags, lol. The amount that I felt this, lol. It had been an awful emotionally abused relationship up until the point it turned physical. He choked me while I was driving and tried to drive the car off the road. Situation isn't funny, but I do get a quick laugh when I remember he acted that way because I wouldn't text his mom for him to ask if he can stay at my place. I was still in high school at the time. Choking is the biggest sign that they'll eventually kill their partner. Don't ever stay with someone who chokes you, even for a second. I'm glad you got away from him. It became clear he was not over his ex. No thank you to that kind of drama. We had been in a relationship for almost a year, and the whole time he was manipulating and gaslighting me to a point where I broke down one night. I had been going through a lot at the time with family and losing my job over the pandemic, and he knew I was struggling mentally. When I left the bedroom after I broke down, he went to bed. I called my sister and she calmed me down. I went to sleep crying, and the next morning he told me that he thought I would try to commit suicide. And when I asked him why he didn't follow me out if he thought that, his response was that he was tired and needed to sleep. He was sure I was suicidal, yet he wanted to sleep. I knew we were heading towards an end to our relationship, but I didn't think it was that bad. Needless to say, I dropped off all his belongings that were at my place a few days later. Gentle hugs for you. I hope you're in a better place now that you're free from him. Gaslit me and was emotionally abusive the whole time, but I didn't snap out of it until outside people were telling me I was being treated badly. The last straw was when he spilled a drink in my car. I told him he would have to clean it up, and he proceeded to yell at me in front of my friends that were with us. There were lots of other moments before that, but I knew I was done for sure at that moment. He challenged me. Said, "You'll never call the cops." I did. The cops say he has a right to live here. At the end of my lease, which he isn't on, BTW, I'll be exercising my right to move. Then the landlord will have to evict him, in which case they should just do it now. Cops are lazy. When I found out that he'd cheated on me while I was pregnant, in labor, immediately postpartum with our son. My baby was all of 4 days old when I got the proof, and I tried giving him a chance to explain himself. But then he blamed me and said it was my fault he had to cheat because I wouldn't put out. I decided at that moment that I didn't want my son growing up thinking that kind of disgusting a toxic train of thought was okay. I've never been happier. I had put up with 3 years of cheating, assault sexually, physically, and verbally. He would kick me out of the apartment for angering him, and I would have to sleep in my car until he was ready to forgive me. One night he went to his friend's apartment and got wasted. He called me at 4 a.m. to come pick him up 30 minutes away. I did as he asked, and just as I am a minute from his friend's place, my cell rings. It's him, drunkenly stating, "I'm home, thanks for nothing." He had driven himself anyway because he didn't want to wait for me to pick him up, and apparently thought I wasn't actually coming. I snapped my pink Motorola Razr shut and drove back to our place, gathered my shit, told him I was done, and called my mom. Her first words to me were, "Thank God. Come home. I love your mom." When I came home from work after a 16-hour shift and he wanted to argue about something stupid, we had been having a lot of fights lately and I was over it. I just sat there thinking, this is it. It's never going to change. I stood up and said, "I'm done, I'm going to bed," and starting walking to the bedroom. He yelled, "Get back here, I am not done talking to you." And in that moment I was done. I looked at him and said, "Nope, I'm done. We are done." Long story short, within a month I was in my new house and single. It was a mess. He didn't believe we were over because we had split up before and got back together, but that was the last time. Edit typo. Receiving a grand total of 0.0 support when I needed it most. He told me he thought women don't deserve the right to vote because women can't be drafted. When I fell from a ladder when we were remodeling our house and broke my ankle, the very first words out of his mouth were, "Fuck, I don't need this shit right now." He got mad when I cried out in pain when he and our neighbor tried to lift me into the car. When our neighbor explained to him to call on the non-emergency line to get an ambulance to take me to the hospital, he ignored his advice and called 911. Then proceeds to berate me while I am laying on the front lawn for the bill for the ambulance. I ended having to stay overnight because I needed surgery. I needed a plate and 7 screws to put my ankle back together again. The ambulance cost $0 because I was admitted into the hospital.